I signed the papers believing the war was over. Then a photo lit up my screen at 2 in the morning. My ex-husband was kissing his new bride. But I did not see love. I saw a jagged scar near her hairline that I had memorized from a fraud case 5 years ago. That face does not belong to a dream woman. It belongs to an arsonist, and she just lit a match inside the wrong house. My name is Brielle Maddox. I make my living assessing risk, spotting the cracks in a corporate ledger before the building collapses. At 38, I had built Stonegate Meridian Group into a fortress of forensic accounting. Yet I sat there in my empty apartment, staring at a digital document that declared my marriage to Ethan Caldwell was legally dissolved. We had called it an amicable split. I had signed the papers at 4 in the afternoon, believing I was cutting my losses on a relationship that had simply run its course. I was wrong. It was 2 in the morning when the truth hit me, glowing soft and blue from the screen of my phone. I was scrolling through social media, a bad habit when insomnia strikes, when a notification from my former mother-in-law, Janice, popped up. It was a photo from a private album, captioned, "Finally, a real family celebration." I clicked on it. The image showed a garden ceremony, intimate and expensive. Ethan was standing under a trellis of white wisteria, wearing the navy suit I had bought him for his promotion last year. Holding his hand was a woman in a silk slip dress, looking up at him with adoring eyes, Camille Hart. The woman Ethan had sworn was just a new project manager, behind them. His mother and sister were smiling with a radiance I had never seen directed at me. They looked like they had just successfully pulled off a heist. I did not feel the sting of tears. Instead, I felt the cold, sharp prick of adrenaline. I zoomed in on the bride's face. She was laughing, her head thrown back, exposing her temple. There, barely visible under the layer of professional makeup, was a thin, jagged scar running right into her hairline. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that scar. I closed my eyes, accessing the mental archive of every fraud case I had worked on over the last 15 years. 7 years ago, I had been brought in to clean up a disaster for a tech conglomerate in Seattle. A woman had infiltrated the executive suite, embezzled millions, and vanished into thin air. Her file contained a grainy security photo of a woman with that exact distinctive scar near her left temple. She had used a different name then. I opened my eyes and looked at the screen again. I swiped to the next photo. Ethan's hand was resting possessively on Camille's waist. My gaze locked onto his ring finger. It was a vintage gold band with a unique braided pattern. "You said you lost that at the equinox," I whispered to the silence of my bedroom. My voice sounded raspy. "Foreign. You swore you left it in the locker." I minimized the photo and pulled up the text message Ethan had sent me at 9 that morning. "I'm landing in Houston for the expo. Don't worry about the rest of the filing fees. I'll handle it when I get back." Houston. He was 20 minutes away at his mother's estate, marrying a ghost. A normal woman might have screamed. A normal woman might have called her ex-husband to demand an explanation for the betrayal. But I am not a normal woman. I am a risk analyst. I realized in that second that everything about the last 6 months, the sudden arguments, his pressure to sign the divorce agreement quickly, his insistence that we keep our finances simple for the sake of speed was a calculated maneuver. I set the phone down on the nightstand with deliberate slowness. I reached for my laptop and flipped it open. The screen flared to life, illuminating the dark room. I did not go to social media. I navigated straight to my encrypted server and opened a folder I had named Caldwell Dissolution. "Let's see what you're really hiding," I muttered, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I opened the asset spreadsheet. If Camille Hart was actually the woman from the Seattle case, she did not marry Ethan for his charm. She married him because he was a door that she could open to get to something else. And if the Caldwell family was smiling that broadly, they thought they had just traded up. They had no idea they had just invited a predator into their home. I typed in my password and watched the files load. If she is really the person in that file, then this divorce was never just about feelings. I pulled up the settlement agreement on my laptop, the blue light stinging my tired eyes. At the time, I had read it with the exhaustion of a woman who just wanted to be free. Now, I read it like a forensic auditor. There it was, buried in paragraph 14. Subsection B. A temporary non-disclosure clause and a strict non-interference stipulation regarding business operations. Ethan had pushed for that, claiming it was to protect his consulting reputation during the transition. "You played me," I whispered to the empty room. "You played me so well." I opened a new tab and logged into the cloud server for the security system of our former marital home. The house was legally mine, but I had moved out 2 weeks ago to let the dust settle, leaving it empty. Or so I thought. I scrubbed the timeline back to last Tuesday, a day I had been at a conference in Chicago. The video feed loaded. The front door opened. Ethan walked in, but he was not alone. 2 men in suits followed him, carrying laser measuring tools and clipboards. They were not friends. They were appraisers. Ethan was walking them through my living room, pointing at the custom molding, gesturing like a man listing assets for a fire sale. I grabbed my phone and dialed Aiden Rowe. It was 3:15 in the morning, but Aiden was the kind of lawyer who slept with his phone on his chest. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Brielle, is the building on fire?" "Not the building," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hand. "My life. Aiden, listen to me carefully. I need you to pull the title watch on the Brookhaven house, and I need you to check the court docket for any filings under my name involving competency." "Competency!" Aiden's tone shifted from sleepy to sharp instantly. "Brielle? What are you talking about?" "Just do it, and check the business credit lines. I think Ethan approved a limit increase before he lost signature authority." I heard the rustle of sheets and the click of a keyboard on his end. I waited, watching the video loop of Ethan laughing with the appraisers in my foyer. "Okay, the house is still in your name," Aiden said after a long minute. "But, hell, there is a flag on the county clerk system. It is a pre-filing notification. Someone has prepared a draft petition for temporary conservatorship." The air left my lungs. "Conservatorship," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "On what grounds?" The draft cites severe emotional instability due to professional burnout. Aiden read, his voice dropping. "It claims you are a danger to your own financial solvency. They were not just going to take the house, Brielle. They were going to have you declared incompetent so they could legally manage it for you." I stared at the wall. It was brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. If I was declared unstable, the divorce settlement could be contested, and control of my company's assets would fall to a court-appointed guardian. And who better than the concerned ex-husband? They want to erase me. I said, cold, "We stop this now." Aiden growled. "I will file an injunction at 8 in the morning." "No," I said quickly. "Do not file anything yet. If we strike now, they will just change tactics. I need to know who is pulling the strings." I hung up and turned back to the photo of the bride. Camille Hart. I ran her name through my proprietary background software. Nothing. Her digital footprint was impossibly clean. Her social media accounts were only 2 months old, filled with generic photos of sunsets and vague inspirational quotes. It was a synthetic identity. "Aiden," I texted him. "Run the bride's face. Deep search. Use the proprietary database." 10 minutes later, my secure inbox pinged. The report was short. A facial recognition match of 92%. The photo on the left was the blushing bride, Camille Hart. The photo on the right was a mugshot from 5 years ago. Name Delaney Frost. Charge felony forgery and fraud. Status case settled out of court. Sealed. Delaney Frost. I said the name aloud, testing its weight. She was a legend in the underground risk circles. A chameleon who specialized in forging signatures on trust documents. My phone buzzed again. It was Aiden. "Brielle." That is a 92% match. This woman is a ghost. If Ethan married her, he did not just marry a pretty face. He married a weapon. I know, I replied. A calm, icy rage settled over me. They think I am the victim. They think I am crying in my pillow right now. What do you want to do? Aiden asked. I looked at the draft petition for my own insanity that Aiden had forwarded. I looked at the face of the woman who had helped Ethan plan my destruction. I want them to think they won, I said softly. I want them to think I am exactly as weak as they say I am. And then, I am going to let them walk right into the vault. I checked into the Langham under the name Brielle Maddox. I did not use my married name, and I certainly did not use the corporate account that Ethan still had visibility on. This room was not a sanctuary. It was a command center. I lined up 3 encrypted hard drives on the mahogany desk and connected to a secure VPN that bypassed the servers at Stonegate Meridian Group entirely. Aiden was on speakerphone, his voice crisp and devoid of the sleepiness from our earlier call. The silent plan is active, he said. I have partitioned your personal trust from the joint operating accounts. Now, regarding Ethan's supplementary credit cards on your business line, do you want to cancel them? No, I said, typing a command into the terminal to mirror my email archives. If I cancel them, he gets a notification. I want to freeze them for suspected fraud activity. It looks like a bank error. It buys us 48 hours before he can scream at a customer service representative. Done, Aiden replied. I will flag the limit. Anything over $100 triggers a decline. He is going to be very embarrassed the next time he tries to buy champagne. I hung up and opened the property valuation software. I needed an independent appraisal on the house, one that Ethan's team could not manipulate. I did not intend to sell it on the open market. A public listing would take months. I needed a number that I could use as a weapon. If they wanted to play games with asset values to declare me incompetent, I needed to know exactly what that house was worth down to the cent. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica, my former executive assistant who was still at the office. Ms. Maddox. I know I shouldn't disturb you. The message read. But Ethan just submitted another reimbursement request. $600 for a client dinner at Le Bernardin last night. The thing is, his calendar was blank, and the receipt looks odd. Send it to the secure server, I typed back. Do not approve it. Just leave it pending. Expense fraud. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was exactly what I needed. I opened the admin console for my company and created a new subdirectory project Clearwater. It sounded innocent enough, like a sustainability initiative. In reality, it was a forensic audit of my own life. I set up an automated script to scrape every digital signature, every approval log, and every email metadata tag involving Ethan Caldwell from the last 3 years. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Green, steady, relentless. Then, I picked up my personal phone. It was time to play the role they had written for me. The defeated ex-wife. The broken woman who just wanted peace. I navigated to Janice Caldwell's contact. I stared at the cursor for a moment, letting my breathing slow down. I needed to sound resigned. Congratulations to the family. I typed. I saw the photos. I will not make any noise. I just want to move on. I hit send. The response came within 30 seconds. Janice did not even pretend to hesitate. Thank you, Brielle. We are all very happy. She is finally the right standard for this family. I stared at the heart emoji. It was red and cheerful and absolutely poisonous. The right standard, that confirmed it. They did not just want a new wife for Ethan. They wanted someone who played the game the way they did. Someone with a scar on her face and a fake name. You have no idea, I whispered to the screen. Just as the sun began to bleed through the heavy curtains, my email pinged with a notification from the real estate portal. I frowned. I had not listed the house yet. I had only requested a private valuation, but there it was, an unsolicited offer on the property. I opened the document. The offer was from a shell company called Obsidian Ventures. It was a cash offer slightly below market value, but with zero contingencies. We can close in 72 hours. The cover letter stated, "As is, no inspection required." I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. A cash offer that fast, with no inspection. That does not happen in the real world unless the buyer is desperate to acquire the asset before anyone looks too closely at it, or unless the buyer already knows exactly what is inside. 72 hours, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. You are in a hurry, aren't you? They were trying to secure the house before I could leverage it. They wanted me out, and they wanted their own locks on the doors by the end of the week. Aiden, I said, dialing him back immediately. Do not reject the offer. Tell them we are interested, but tell them. I need 5 days to pack. 5 days, Aiden asked. Why? Because, I said, looking at the progress bar of Project Clearwater hitting 100%. I need time to plant the landmines. I was sitting in the sterile quiet of my hotel room when my phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Linda. She was a distant cousin of the Caldwells, a woman who meant well but possessed the social awareness of a brick. I know it is hard, sweetie. But he looked so settled. Her text read, attached was a video file. My thumb hovered over the play button. I should have deleted it. Instead, I pressed play. The video was shaky, shot from a handheld phone amidst the reception guests. The camera panned across the garden, capturing the clinking of champagne flutes and the swell of a string quartet. It landed on the couple as they cut the cake. Ethan looked drunk on validation, his face flushed with the triumph of a man who thinks he has upgraded his life. Then, the camera zoomed in. Camille turned. For a split second, she looked directly into the lens. The smile that had been plastered on her face vanished, replaced by a flat, cold stare. It lasted less than a second before the smile snapped back into place. But I froze the frame. I know that look, I whispered to the empty room. It was not the look of a woman in love. It was the look of an auditor assessing the value of a distressed asset. It was calculation, pure and sharp. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back in a mediation room in Seattle. 5 years ago. The fluorescent lights were humming too loud. A lawyer was reading a list of charges: embezzlement, forgery, unauthorized transfer of funds, and sitting across the mahogany table, the woman I knew then as Delaney Frost was listening with that exact same expression. She had looked at the evidence not with fear, but with amusement. You cannot prove intent, she had said back then, her voice soft and mocking. I was just helping manage the overhead. I opened my eyes. The woman in the video was Delaney. The surgery to change her nose was good, but the eyes were the same. And that scar, now hidden under a layer of expensive foundation, was the receipt she could not erase. I grabbed my other phone and dialed Marcus, an investigator I used for deep-dive due diligence. He answered on the first ring. I need a trace, I said, keeping my voice low. Nevada records. Go back 5 years. Cross-reference a hairline scar on the left temple with the alias Delaney Frost. And Marcus. I need it fast. You think she is active again? Marcus asked. I think she just married my ex-husband, I replied. As I hung up, a notification popped up. A voicemail from Ethan. He must have called while I was analyzing the video. I put it on speaker. Bree. Look. I know things are tense. Ethan's voice cracked through the speaker, breathless and anxious. But let's keep this civil. For the sake of our reputations. We do not need lawyers digging up old dirt. Let's just move on. Please. I replayed the message. Reputation. He repeated the word twice. He was not asking for emotional closure. He was begging for a ceasefire because he knew his perimeter was weak. You are terrified, I said to the phone. You are not afraid of losing me. You are afraid of what I will find if I keep looking at the ledger. I needed to confirm the motive. I put on a black dress that cost $2,000 armor for the modern battlefield and took a cab to the FinTech Innovators Mixer at the St. Regis. I knew Ethan would not be there. He was on his honeymoon. But his circle would be. I stood near a marble pillar, swirling my sparkling water, making myself invisible. Two venture capitalists were talking loudly near the bar. Caldwell says he is launching a new fund next quarter, one said. Laughing. Says he has a whale backing him. Some quiet money from out west. The new wife, the other asked. Supposedly she has access to liquid capital. Millions. He thinks he won the lottery. It clicked. The final piece of the puzzle slotted into place. Ethan was broke. He had leveraged himself to the hilt to keep up appearances, and now he needed liquidity. Camille Delaney had promised him funding. But she did not have money. She stole money. She was not a savior. She was using Ethan as a battering ram to break into my network, my credit rating, and my reputation. I walked out into the cool night air, the city lights blurring in my vision. You want a treasure chest, I murmured, a plan forming in the darkness of my mind. Fine, I will give you one. I would create a bait asset, a specialized investment account, seemingly forgotten, ripe with liquidity. I would make it look like the one thing I had neglected to secure. If Camille was who I thought she was, she would not be able to resist. She would reach for it. And when she did, I would close the lid on her hand. Aiden forwarded the document at 6 a.m. It was a draft petition for an emergency temporary conservatorship filed in the county probate court. I sat with my coffee, reading the legal arguments that detailed my own mental unraveling. According to the filing, I was suffering from acute executive burnout and paranoid delusions that rendered me unfit to manage my own financial estate. They are not holding back, Aiden said over the secure line. They are citing your long hours and your recent isolation as proof of instability. I scrolled to the signature page. I expected to see Janice Caldwell's name. She had been telling anyone who would listen that I was overworked for years, but the second signature made my stomach tighten. It was Jason Miller, a junior data analyst at my firm. A quiet kid I had hired straight out of college 6 months ago. Jason, I whispered. They got to Jason. He likely thinks he is helping, Aiden said, his voice grim. Or they promised him a fast track to a senior role once the new management steps in. Brielle, if a judge sees an employee testifying against you alongside a family member, they might grant the temporary order. It freezes your accounts. It puts Ethan in the driver's seat. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I felt a cold, clinical clarity wash over me. This was not a family dispute anymore. It was a hostile takeover attempt. Do not file the motion to dismiss yet, I commanded. I want you to schedule an independent psychiatric evaluation for me with Dr. Aris today. I want a clean bill of health on record before they even file this garbage. And Aiden, start drafting a countersuit for conspiracy to commit fraud. You want to go nuclear? Aiden asked. No, I replied. I want to bury them in the crater. I hung up and switched screens to the Project Clearwater dashboard. My internal audit team had flagged a series of irregularities. While I was reading about my alleged insanity, my software had been tracking a stream of money bleeding out of the company. What do we have? I asked my lead forensic accountant, Sarah, via encrypted chat. We found a recurring payment to a vendor called Halo Event Logistics. Sarah typed back. The invoices are generic templates. $2,000 here, $1,500 there. Small enough to fly under the radar of manual approval, but they have been hitting the account every Friday for 8 months. I clicked on the vendor details. The bank account was registered to a Shell LLC in Nevada. The beneficiary was listed as a T. Hart, likely a relative of Camille's new identity. But it was the contact phone number on the registration form that made my heart race. I cross-referenced it with my private file on the Seattle fraud case. It was a match. The number belonged to a burner phone used by Delaney Frost 5 years ago. She is lazy, I said to the empty room. She reused the number. "Do you want me to block the vendor?" Sarah asked. "No," I said instantly. "Do not touch it. If we block it, they know we are watching. Let the payments go through." "I need the total theft to cross the threshold for grand larceny. Let them steal a little more." I needed to speed up their timeline. They were chipping away at the foundation, but I needed them to try and blow the doors off. I opened my corporate email client and composed a message to my CFO, restricted to internal eyes only. I knew Ethan still had backdoor access to this specific server through a legacy admin account he thought I had forgotten. Subject: liquidation of North Creek asset portfolio body. I have decided to divest the commercial holdings in Austin to rebalance our liquidity. We are looking at a cash injection of roughly $4 million by next Tuesday. Please prepare the preliminary transfer documents. I hit send. It was a lie. There was no sale, but to a desperate man and a predatory woman, it looked like a fresh kill. I waited. The digital trap was set. It took less than 12 hours. At 9 o'clock that night, my security bot pinged. Someone had logged into the shared drive using Ethan's old credentials. The IP address was not from Houston, where the expo was being held. It was from the Seychelles. Enjoying the honeymoon? Ethan. I murmured, watching the cursor on my screen move ghost-like through the folders. The intruder went straight for the folder labeled North Creek Divestiture. They were not looking for closure. They were looking for the routing numbers. "Got you," I said. Camille had taken the bait. She was not just digging a tunnel into my company, she was building her own prison cell, brick by brick, and she had no idea the architect was watching. I signed the final deed transfer at 8 in the morning. The price was 10% below market value, a loss of nearly $200,000 on paper that would have made the old Brielle wince. But the new Brielle knew that liquidity was speed, and speed was the only currency that mattered right now. The buyer was Obsidian Ventures, a shell corporation set up by a trusted associate of Aiden. To the outside world, and specifically to the Caldwell family, the house had simply been swallowed by a faceless investment firm. "The ink is dry," the notary said, stamping the document with a heavy thud. "Good," I said, handing over the heavy brass ring of keys. "Implement the handover protocols immediately." The terms were brutal by design. The locks were to be drilled out and replaced within the hour. The gate codes were wiped. The alarm monitoring service was transferred to a private security detail. I had included a strict non-disclosure agreement and a clause that explicitly stated no former residents were permitted entry without a court order. I walked through the foyer one last time. I left the Italian leather sofas Ethan had insisted we import. I left the 80-inch television and the wine collection he liked to show off to his friends. I left the expensive espresso machine. Those were things. Things could be replaced. I carried only a single weatherproof box. Inside were my birth certificate, my passport, the hard drives containing the company's founding algorithms, and a framed photograph of my father. I did not look back as the locksmith's van pulled into the driveway. I was not leaving my home. I was sealing a crime scene. By 9:30, I was in the server room at Stonegate Meridian Group. The hum of the cooling fans was the only sound as I stood behind the IT director. "Execute the admin revoke?" I ordered. "Are you sure?" "Ms. Maddox?" he asked, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Mr. Caldwell has had root access since the founding." "Revoke it," I said, my voice flat, "and reroute all expenditure approvals to the Internal Compliance Board. If he tries to buy a pack of gum on the corporate account, I want a red alert on my desk. One keystroke, and Ethan Caldwell was digitally decapitated. He just did not know it yet." But the system purge revealed something else. As the logs cleared, a flagged email chain surfaced from the depths of the archive. It was not from Ethan's corporate address. It was from his personal Gmail, sent to Mark, a junior accounts payable clerk who had always seemed nervous around me. I opened the thread. "Just push the invoice through. Mark. I need this handled before the quarter ends. I will remember who helped me when bonuses come around. Don't make me ask twice. It was a clear pattern of coercion. Ethan was bypassing the controls I had built by bullying a subordinate. Get Mark, I told my assistant. Bring him to the conference room. Tell him to bring his laptop. When Mark walked in, he looked like he was walking to the gallows. He was shaking, clutching his computer against his chest. I did not yell. I did not threaten. I simply slid the printed email across the polished table. I didn't know what to do, Mark stammered, his face pale. He said it was urgent business development. Sit down. Mark, I said quietly, I am not here to fire you. I am here to offer you a choice. You can be the fall guy for embezzlement, or you can be the witness who helped stop it. Mark looked up, tears welling in his eyes. I want to help. I have the other emails. He told me to hide them. Give them to me, I said. Within 20 minutes, I had a complete timeline of unauthorized directives. It was enough to bury Ethan, but I needed to seal the coffin. I called Aiden, draft the package. I said, notice of termination for cause, violation of fiduciary duty, and a demand letter for the restitution of $45,000 in misappropriated funds. I want it ready to serve. It will be ready by noon. Aiden replied. Do you want to send it to him in Seychelles? No, I said. Looking at the calendar, he lands tomorrow. I am scheduling a mandatory compliance meeting for 2 in the afternoon. Invite legal, audit, and the risk insurance representatives. Tell Ethan his attendance is required to clarify some ledger discrepancies before the quarter closes. He will think it is a formality, Aiden noted. He will think he can charm his way out of it, I corrected. I hung up and opened the safe in my office. Inside lay a single manila folder containing the background check on Delaney Frost, the mugshots, the alias list, the signature analysis. It was my nuclear option. I would not put it on the table at the start of the meeting. I would keep it hidden. I wanted them to think this was just about money. I wanted them to think they could negotiate. And when they felt safe enough to lie, I would show them exactly who they were dealing with. I parked my car 2 blocks away, obscured by the low-hanging branches of an oak tree, and propped my tablet on the dashboard. The live feed from the security camera at the main gate was crisp, transmitting every pixel of their confusion in high definition. I had transferred ownership of the house to Obsidian Ventures 24 hours ago, but I had kept the remote admin access active for exactly this moment. Ethan's taxi pulled up at 10 in the morning. He stepped out, looking tan and victorious, pulling a Louis Vuitton suitcase that I knew he had charged to the company card. Camille followed him, wearing a white sundress and a wide-brimmed hat, looking every inch the mistress of the manor. I watched Ethan punch his code into the keypad. Nothing happened. He punched it again, harder this time. The small LED light blinked red. It must be a glitch. I heard him say through the audio feed, "The system is sensitive to humidity." My phone on the passenger seat began to buzz. Ethan calling. I let it vibrate against the leather. I was not going to answer. I was the director of this play, not an actor. Suddenly, a black SUV screeched to a halt behind the taxi. Janice Caldwell burst out, waving a manila envelope like a weapon. She did not look like a grieving mother. She looked like a general arriving at the front lines. "Where is she?" Janice screamed at the intercom. "Brielle, we know you changed the codes. We have the emergency petition. You are clearly out of your mind." The gate did not open. Instead, the pedestrian door swung wide, and a uniformed security officer from Obsidian Ventures stepped out. He was 6'4", built like a linebacker, and he was not smiling. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, trying to puff out his chest. "I live here. Open this gate." "Mr. Caldwell," the guard asked, his voice calm and bored. "This property was transferred to new ownership yesterday. You are trespassing." "Transferred." Camille's voice cut through the air, sharp and high. She stepped closer to Ethan, her hand gripping his arm tight enough to leave bruises. "Ethan, what is he talking about? You said the house was... You said it was in the trust. It is a mistake, Ethan yelled, his face turning a mottled red. My ex-wife, she is having a breakdown. We have papers proving she is incompetent to sign anything. The deed transfer is recorded with the county, the guard said, holding up a clipboard. The new owners have taken possession. Unless you have a court order signed by a judge today overturning the sale, you need to remove your vehicle from the easement. I watched Camille's face. The color drained out of it. She looked from the guard to Ethan, and the adoration vanished. In its place was the cold, calculating look of a woman realizing she had bet on a losing horse. You told me you owned it, Camille hissed, her voice trembling with genuine rage. You told me. You said the assets were secured. They are, Ethan stammered, sweating now. She is playing games. I will fix it. On cue. A motorcycle courier pulled up to the curb. He dismounted and walked toward the chaotic group, holding 2 thick, cream-colored envelopes tied with black ribbon. They looked elegant. They looked like wedding gifts. Package for Ethan Caldwell and Camille Hart. The courier called out. See. Ethan turned to Camille, a desperate smile plastering onto his face. She is trying to make peace. She knows she lost. Ethan tore open the envelope. I zoomed in on the feed. I knew exactly what was inside. It was not a gift certificate. It was a formal notice of termination for cause, effective immediately. Behind it was a forensic accounting schedule listing $45,000 in unauthorized expenses and a summons for a mandatory compliance audit. Ethan froze. He read the first page, his lips moving silently. This is insane, he whispered. I am a founder. She cannot fire me. I own equity. He did not. He owned profit-sharing units, which were revocable upon termination for cause. He had 0% voting equity. He was just an employee with a fancy title. And I had just fired him. Camille ripped open her envelope. Hers contained a cease and desist regarding the vendor Halo Event Logistics, a demand for the repayment of all fraudulent invoices, and a notification that the file was being prepared for the district attorney. You idiot, Camille whispered, dropping the papers onto the pavement. She backed away from him. You broke. Lying. Idiot. You have nothing. Camille, wait. Ethan reached for her, but she slapped his hand away. The tableau was perfect. The mother screaming at a security guard, the husband holding his termination papers, and the wife realizing her long con had just imploded. I put the car in drive. I pulled out from the curb and drove slowly past the house. I did not speed up. I rolled down my window just as I passed them. Ethan looked up. He saw me. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at the woman beside him, then back at me, and the realization hit him like a physical blow. He saw the coldness in my eyes. He realized that while he was busy planning a wedding, I had been planning a war. I did not wave. I did not smile. I just kept driving, leaving them on the sidewalk with their luggage and their lies, locked out of the only life they had ever valued. The dossier landed on my encrypted server at 3 in the afternoon. It was dense, thorough, and absolutely chilling. Marcus, my private investigator, had earned every cent of his $15,000 fee. The woman currently calling herself Camille Hart was not a new creation. She was a serial fabrication. She has been busy, Aiden said, pacing the length of my hotel suite as he read the physical copy. Delaney Frost, Sarah Jenkins, Elena Vane. 3 names in 10 years. 3 states. I scrolled through the timeline on my screen. The pattern was surgical. In each case, she targeted a wealthy family with liquid assets but weak internal controls. She would integrate herself, usually through a romantic partner, and then the legal maneuvering would begin. Powers of attorney, guardianship petitions, conservatorships. She did not steal money by breaking into vaults. She stole it by convincing judges that the owners were too old, too sick, or too unstable to hold the keys. She weaponizes the legal system, I said, my voice quiet. She finds the crack in the armor and widens it until she can walk right through. But the next document in the folder made my blood run cold. It was a recovered draft from Ethan's cloud account, a document labeled Asset Sharing Agreement. Private. I had assumed Ethan was a victim. I had assumed he was a foolish man blinded by a beautiful, younger woman. I was wrong. Look at this, I told Aiden, turning the laptop toward him. It was a draft of a post-nuptial agreement between Ethan and Camille. It explicitly stated that upon the successful transfer of the Stonegate Meridian control to Ethan via the conservatorship, Camille would receive 20% of the liquidated value as a consulting fee. He knew, Aiden whispered, disgust dripping from his tone. He hired her. He brought her in to help him steal your company. He is not a victim, I said, feeling a hard knot of anger tighten in my chest. He is a co-conspirator. He realized he could not beat me in a fair divorce, so he found a specialist who could help him cheat. I cross-referenced the dates. Delaney Frost had appeared in Ethan's life exactly 3 weeks before he started pushing me to sign the quick divorce papers. It was not a whirlwind romance. It was a business timeline. My phone buzzed. It was a secure message from my office manager, Karen, Brielle. I remembered something. The text read, "Last month, before you moved out, a woman came to the office. She said she was from the event planning committee for the charity gala. She asked to see the vendor payment protocols. I thought it was weird, but Ethan vouched for her. He said she was auditing the logistics. It was her." I said to Aiden. She walked right into my office and cased the joint while I was sitting in the next room. I stood up and walked to the window. The city looked peaceful below, but inside this room, we were assembling a weapon. I did not want to just win a lawsuit. I wanted to dismantle a career. We are not filing a civil suit. I said, "Not yet." "What is the play?" Aiden asked. "We are building a criminal referral," I replied. "I want a complete package. The timeline of her name changes. The IP addresses from the unauthorized logins, the forged invoices from the shell company, and this draft agreement proving conspiracy." I sat back down at the desk. I began to organize the files into a single devastating narrative. This was not about emotion. This was about data. I linked the email where Ethan instructed the junior staff to pay the fake vendor directly to the bank account registered to Delaney's alias. I connected the dots between the conservatorship petition and the post-nup payoff. "Aiden," I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard, "call your contact at the Economic Crimes Unit. Tell them we have a priority case involving sophisticated identity fraud and corporate embezzlement. Tell them the dollar amount is approaching 6 figures. They will want a meeting." Aiden warned. "Good," I said. "Set it up, but not at the police station. Set it up at the office. I want to invite Ethan and Camille to a final compliance review to clear their names. I want the police to be waiting in the conference room next door." Aiden paused. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "You want to entrap them?" "No," I corrected him. "I want to let them hang themselves. Delaney Frost thinks she can change her face and her name and walk away when things get hot. I am going to make sure that the only name she carries for the next 10 years is inmate." I looked at the picture of the bride one last time. "You picked the wrong target," I whispered. "You should have stuck to widows and retirees. You have no idea what happens when you try to steal from the person who wrote the security protocols." The invitation sent to Ethan was carefully worded. It was not a summons. It was framed as a compliance opportunity, a chance for him to explain the irregularities and avoid immediate legal action. It was the kind of rope a narcissist would instinctively grab to hang himself with, believing he could talk his way out of the noose. At 2 o'clock sharp, the double doors of the conference room swung open. Ethan walked in, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than $3,000. He did not look like a man facing an embezzlement inquiry. He looked like a man inconvenienced by an emotional ex-wife. "This is a waste of time," Ethan announced, tossing his leather portfolio onto the table. He did not even look at the team of auditors sitting in silence. He looked straight at me. "Brielle, honestly, is this how you want to handle things? Dragging in legal just because you are jealous? It is pathetic." I did not speak. I simply nodded to Mr. Henderson, the lead independent auditor. Henderson cleared his throat. "Mr. Caldwell, this is not a personal dispute. We have identified 42 separate payments to a vendor listed as Halo Event Logistics. The total amount is $68,000. We have verified that this company has no physical address, no business license in this state, and provided no services to Stonegate Meridian." Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "Camille, my wife handled those bookings. She has a background in events. I just signed the checks. If there is a paperwork error, talk to her." It was the move I expected. He was throwing her under the bus to save his own skin. "You just signed the checks I asked," my voice cutting through the room. "You claimed you were a passive participant." "Yes," Ethan said, adjusting his cufflinks. "I trusted her judgment. I might have been negligent, but I was not malicious." I tapped a key on my laptop. The projector screen behind me changed. It displayed the email chain I had extracted from the junior accountant. "Mark, just push the invoice through. Mark, I need this handled before the quarter ends. Don't make me ask twice." The color drained from Ethan's face. "That is your personal email," I said, "and that is a direct order to a subordinate to bypass compliance protocols. You were not passive, Ethan. You were the enforcer." Before he could stammer a reply, a commotion erupted in the hallway. I heard a woman's voice raised in anger. "I am his wife. You cannot keep me out of there." It was Camille. She was trying to breach the meeting. Aiden stood up and walked to the door, opening it just enough to block the path. Camille was there, face flushed, eyes darting past him to look at Ethan. "Ms. Hart," Aiden said calmly, "you have no standing in this meeting. You are not a shareholder, and according to a flag from the county clerk this morning, your marriage license application contains a mismatch in your social security number. Until that is resolved, you are legally a stranger to this company. That is a clerical error," Camille spat, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. "Is it?" I asked. Standing up, I motioned for Aiden to let the door stay open so she could see the screen. I changed the slide. 2 photos appeared, one of Camille Hart, one of Delaney Frost. We ran a pattern analysis, I said, looking directly at her. In 2019, a woman named Delaney Frost was accused of forging power of attorney documents in Seattle. She used a specific method. She would target a family, isolate the primary earner, and then file for a conservatorship based on mental instability to seize control of the assets. "I don't know who that is," Camille said, but she took a step back. "How dare you?" Janice Caldwell pushed past Camille, entering the room like a storm. "You are trying to frame my son and his wife. You are the one who is unstable." "Brielle, we have seen the signs." "The signs?" Aiden asked, picking up a document from the table. "You mean the signs listed in this draft petition for emergency guardianship?" Janice froze. "We have the draft." "Janice," Aiden continued, his voice lethal, "and we have your signature on the affidavit. You swore under penalty of perjury that Brielle was hallucinating. You were not protecting your son. You were helping them steal the company." Ethan looked at his mother, then at Camille. He saw Camille backing away toward the elevators. He saw his mother trembling as the realization of criminal liability hit her. "Camille," Ethan asked, his voice cracking, You said this was standard legal protection. You said..." "She lied to you, Ethan," I said softly. "She needed a useful idiot to open the door, and you held it wide open for her." Ethan looked back at me, panic rising in his chest. He realized suddenly that the woman he married was already calculating her exit route, leaving him holding the bag for $68,000 of fraud and a conspiracy charge. "Wait," Ethan stammered. I can explain." She told me what to write. She gave me the templates I know, I said. I pulled up the final document on the screen. It was the text of the insanity plea they had prepared against me. "I have one question. Ethan," I said, leaning forward. "Who wrote the clinical description of my supposed paranoia? Because it is a word-for-word copy of a medical report filed in a fraud case in Seattle 5 years ago. Did you write it? Or did you just copy-paste your own destruction?" "Here is the timestamp," I said, pointing to the projection on the wall. "The draft petition for my conservatorship was created 3 days before your wedding. The author metadata is not Ethan Caldwell. It is linked to an account named Defrost Admin, and the IP address matches the Wi-Fi at the hotel where you stayed for your bachelorette party." "Camille." The room went silent. The hum of the projector fan seemed to grow louder. Camille Hart, or Delaney Frost, stood frozen near the door, her face pale beneath the heavy makeup. Ethan scrambled to find a defense, his eyes darting between me and the auditors. I only signed the affidavit because my mother was worried about you. We thought you were having a breakdown. It was an act of mercy." "Mercy?" I asked, sliding a second document across the table. "Then explain this. 10 minutes after this draft was saved, a request was submitted to the bank to increase the credit limit on my business line by $500,000. The applicant listed was the prospective conservator. You were not trying to save my mind, Ethan. You were trying to secure a line of credit using my company as collateral before the ink was even dry on the court order." Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The narrative of the caring ex-husband had just been shattered by a timestamp. Camille suddenly clutched her stomach, leaning against the wall with a theatrical gasp. "Stop it! You are hurting me. I think I am pregnant. The stress. You are endangering my child." It was a classic deflection, a desperate attempt to shift the room's focus from criminal liability to biological sympathy. "That is irrelevant to the audit," I said, my voice devoid of temperature. "We are looking at financial fraud and conspiracy. Your medical status does not authorize you to forge invoices." Camille's eyes narrowed. She realized the emotional ploy had failed. Her hand shot into her purse, and she pulled out her phone. Her thumbs flew across the screen. "I wouldn't do that," Aiden said calmly. "You can't stop me from texting my lawyer," Camille snapped. "I am not talking about texting," Aiden replied, pointing to the main screen. Camille looked up. The projector was mirroring her phone's activity. I had not just monitored the company servers. I had synced the mobile device management software to the room's display when she connected to the guest Wi-Fi earlier. The screen showed her selecting a folder labeled Invoices, Fake, and hitting the delete button. A bright red box popped up on the wall. "Action denied. Legal hold active. You just attempted to destroy evidence during an active fraud investigation." I said, "That is a felony obstruction charge on top of the larceny." The side door opened. 2 detectives from the Economic Crimes Unit stepped in, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. They did not need to shout. The gravity of their presence was enough. "Ethan Caldwell, Delaney Frost," the lead detective said. "We have a warrant to seize your electronic devices and detain you for questioning regarding identity theft and corporate fraud. Mrs. Janice Caldwell, we have a summons for you as a material witness to the conspiracy." Janice let out a low wail, collapsing into a chair. Ethan looked at the handcuffs appearing on the detective's belt, then looked at me. The arrogance was gone. He looked small. "Brielle," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "Please, do not do this to my mother. She is old. She didn't know. Just let her go. I will sign whatever you want." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had promised to love me, then plotted to have me declared insane so he could spend my money on a woman who was playing him for a fool. You intended to stand in front of a judge and say I was mentally incompetent, I said. You wanted to take away my voice, my business, and my freedom. I am not doing anything to you, Ethan. I am just returning to you exactly what you signed. I turned to Aiden. The divorce papers. Aiden slid the final decree across the table. It was the original agreement, stripped of any payouts, cementing a clean break. Ethan did not read it. He signed it with a shaking hand, the pen scratching loud in the quiet room. Take them, the detective said. I watched them being let out. Ethan was crying. Camille Delaney was already shouting at the officers that she was a victim of coercion. Janice was being helped up by a junior officer, looking frail and defeated. I did not smile. I did not feel a rush of joy. I felt the heavy, solid weight of closure. I picked up the signed divorce papers and placed them in my briefcase. I walked out of the conference room, past the stunned auditors, and down the long hallway to the elevator. I did not look back. In the lobby, my phone buzzed. It was the group chat from the old Caldwell family circle. Someone, unaware of the carnage upstairs, had reposted the wedding photo. So happy for the perfect couple, I looked at the image one last time. I looked at the scar on the bride's face, the scar that had unraveled everything. It wasn't a love story. I whispered to the screen as I deleted the thread. It was a sentencing hearing. I stepped out into the cool afternoon air. The war was over, and for the first time in months, the silence was mine. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am curious to know where you are tuning in from today. So please comment down below with your location and share your thoughts on Brielle's revenge plan. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel. Like this video and smash that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next one.